This is my response to people who don't understand my word alpha, my expression of being a pack leader. This relates specifically to the posts about Akimo, the comments that were made about wanting to reevaluate him and use click bonbon, good training for a dog like him, or strictly positive, goody, oh, sit, please, thank you, click bonbon, is not the kind of work that would help this dog. So the dogs that I take are dogs that have issues, that need someone to make them feel confident, secure, and no need to guard or protect or be aggressive in any way, shape, or form. And so far it has always succeeded. My response to people who feel that I ignore science over myth and that being an alpha or a pack leader is cruel and abusive don't understand what I mean by being alpha. Some of you claim that dogs are not pack animals. This seems to be some new science. From my 23 years of dealing with dogs, I know that if I'm the pack leader, if I lead the dog into doing what he fears to do or what he's anxious about, then he sees me as the leader and therefore has no fear. He feels protective and confident. So being an alpha and a pack leader means getting the dog to understand that there's nothing to fear, there's no need for aggression, there's no need for anything, that I'm there and this is how you need to go on with life. That does not mean that I kick and abuse and yell and hit. Never done that. All it means is that I'm in charge, and then when they do as they've learned, then of course they get rewarded. They get positive reinforcement. Is part of training any dog, with issues or without issues. This building behind me was an investment made by the Barnardi administration SPCA. It was to house a school run by Jacinthe Bouchard to do training and evaluations for not only the adopted dogs, but to be offered to the public for services. She brought in the Dunbar method. She was the official evaluator at the SPCA, and unfortunately she failed a lot of these dogs, which ended up on death row. Now, this turned out to be a waste because it was never used for a school, despite the fact that it was completely finished. I guess the administration or higher powers had different objectives. Eventually, the new administration revamped the building and turned it into an e-shelter. Today, as I drive by, I find out that part of the building has actually become the HSI emergency shelter, where they have the South Korean dogs that were brought in. I was actually recently contacted by a family who adopted a dog from a shelter in Vermont. And this is a little rat terrier type dog, hunting dog, and obviously very, very anxious and bitey. So they went for some of the clicker training and the positive reinforcement and I guess the Dunbar method, where they were told, when people come into the house, throw treats on the floor. And but what happened is once he ate all the treats, then he would turn around and bite the person. As a matter of fact, when I went to meet him, I did not throw treats on the floor. I wanted to see exactly how he behaved, and he did. He bit me in the leg. And so I then realized that this dog needs someone who's going to show him not to be afraid of people coming into his house. So I'm still working with them. I don't charge anything. People spend lots of money on other trainers that don't work, so I want to give them my help and see if that can help them in any way. I saw him as very rehabilitable. This is a dog that obviously needs to be muzzled outside because he could be reactive, and you never know, and should be muzzled in circumstances where there's strangers or people around him that he doesn't know, but can definitely learn not to protect his food, not to protect his house, not to protect his people. It's just a question of getting him to understand that they are in charge, they are the leaders, and he has to trust them. Because of the failed evaluations that Jacinthe Bouchard did, a lot of these dogs ended up on death row at the SPCA. Therefore, Barnardi would call rescues at this time to see if we could take these dogs out and save them. There was only a handful of rescues back in those days. I dealt with death row dogs again and again. The staff was appalled to see the recommendations to kill these dogs, so they would call me to come and take these dogs out so that I would rehabilitate them. Barnardi himself at one point called me and actually sent a driver with a dog to bring to me who had failed evaluation, and he felt this dog was not deserving to die and thought that I was the only person who could possibly give this dog a chance. All that to say, the driver, in fact, was young Danny Bugeaud, who is now the city inspector that I've been dealing with since the Tyson 3 situation with the city. All that to say that Barnardi was not the dog killer that everybody portrayed him to be. He had someone who did his evaluations for him, and it was in her hands to recommend placing the dog or not. After the change of administration, Debbie Groves, rest her soul, was the person who would then do the evaluations, and more often than not, she would call me because of her strict guidelines to say, I cannot pass this dog, Sophie, can you take him, otherwise he's going to end up on death row. So again, I've been taking death row dogs which were unadoptable by the standards of the SPCA because they could not be rehabilitated and therefore not adopted. And I've successfully placed and rehabilitated every dog I took from death row, or every dog I ever took in, except for 2 in 23 years who were not rehabilitable, and therefore I made the right decision to put them down. The free help that is offered by the Facebook community is not something that I need. I know the dog. What I'm looking for is someone to adopt the dog who will be able to deal with him and work with him. And I do not believe that this very soft approach would be helpful for Akimo. So I am looking for someone who is alpha, who is dominant in the sense that they can take charge and make him feel that there is nothing to fear. When I place a dog with any family, whether it be foster or potential adopter, they are told everything about the dog. My advice on what they should do, how they should do it, when they should do it, how they should structure, and so on and so forth is given to them. But if they don't listen, it's not mandatory. I don't whack them with a stick and say, you must do this. People have other methods, such as clicker training, and so they want to try their own ways, and that's what can sometimes lead to situations, as in the case with Akimo. So the help is not needed for me. Once I find that right home, I will certainly refer them to get some help, but the appropriate help for this particular dog. When Rick says that click bonbon trainers deserve to get bit, to be honest, I'd love to see a clicker training session with this particular dog that I'm talking about, or even with a dog like Akimo, and see that person succeed at changing this, what is referred to as aggressive behavior. And it's an aggressive behavior looking, but in reality, it's a warning. So the warnings are there. You need to understand what frightens the dog and then work with him, but not by clicking. I actually tried that on one of my dogs, and he wanted to eat the clickers. So not for every dog. Could be a great method to train puppies, a house-trained dog, to teach them how to walk on a leash, things like that, but not for every situation, definitely. So to all of you that do strictly positive reinforcement and have succeeded so well, I would think, I may be wrong, you should never assume, but I would think you've never worked with cases like I've had, because you would have certainly gotten bit and certainly would have probably run to the cops to have the dog put down, because in your opinion, a dog that bites is a dog that is not rehabilitable. That is, if you try to clicker train the dog into not biting, obviously that's going to be a tough one. To talk a little bit about my history with the city of Montreal and my past life, if I can call it that, I used to work for the engineering department, building inspection at the city of Côte-Saint-Luc. While already working at the city in '95, I started rescuing dogs on my personal time. Unfortunately, shortly after the merge with the city of Montreal, under the Tremblay administration, I started noticing discrepancies in the SPCA billing because the animal control department was handled by the engineering department. So the public security had logs of all the dogs that were picked up or brought to the SPCA, but they differed from the logs on the billing. So Mr. Barnati was brought in. He met with me and the engineer to try and resolve where the discrepancies were. Shortly after that, as an engineering employee, I also noticed discrepancies in the hundreds of thousands of dollars on some of the construction projects between the tender and the billing. And unfortunately, I got overworked at that point from the new staff and administration, and my doctor put me on sick leave. While I was on sick leave, I was fired. My union vigorously fought for 4 years. We went in front of the mediator, and in the end, I lost my case because the mediator felt that I was not really sick if I was able to continue working with dogs and rescuing dogs. The person who signed the fire authorization was Robert Abdallah, who I had never heard of, had never met, had no clue where he fit into the picture. But I soon found out, or 10 years later, when I heard his name at the Charbonneau Commission. So it then all made sense as to why I had actually lost my job. After the loss of my job by Montreal in 2004, all of a sudden, despite rescuing dogs since 95, I started being harassed by the city inspectors. They would come over, canine patrol, to see how many dogs I had, if they had tags, telling me I wasn't an SPCA, I was not allowed to rescue dogs, and so on and so forth, giving me tickets. I tried to fight it in court, and this went on for several years. So in 2007, I decided to become an official charity, which would give me the right that the city claimed I didn't have to help dogs, mostly that were on death row. At the time, I was still pulling dogs from the SPCA. Part of my fights through municipal court was also entry and seizures without a warrant. These inspectors thought they had more rights than anybody else to just come into my place. So in 2010, I had a dog named Tice who bit a dog. It was my fault. I lost control and the dog got bit. I, of course, offered to pay for all the care and whatnot, but this family decided the dog had to die. So the city came after me. They gave me a 48-hour notice to kill the dog. No way to fight this, to discuss it. That was that. So obviously I put the dog in hiding and I fought the city in Superior Court. Now at that particular time, Danny Bugeaud was the inspector in charge of the Tyson file. And so being that he was taken to Superior Court, he was one of their main witnesses, and he sat in court and listened to all the arguments from the city and from myself, and heard the judge clearly state that the bylaws were unconstitutional and totally illegal. You can't go in somebody's home to count how many dogs or whether they have tags. So having won my case, obviously the city didn't fight. They didn't have much of a chance, and they were very unhappy, and it pissed them off. So that's when I started fighting for the others. I knew that the bylaws, people were calling me to say they want to seize my dog, they want to come in, they took my dog, and I started telling them about my judgment, and now they could fight the city because the dog has a right to be rehabilitated. The judge, in my judgment, ordered that a dog did not need to die because of a bite, he just needed to be muzzled. And having bit a dog, he was not considered a danger to the public. Had he bit a person, that is the public. But again, with a muzzle, that removes all dangerous aspect. After that judgment, and Rick, having been exposed to all this, started denouncing and helping others, started denouncing the corruption, the bad laws, the inspectors who think they can just apply the laws as they feel. And so Rick has been then involved in the city legal fights for people to help keep their dogs. Now we come to the Akimo saga. People don't understand why I'm calling it an alleged bite. It is obvious that Katrina Sargent has a bite on her arm. The reason I call it alleged is because I really have no proof that this dog is the one who bit. So there is no way that I was going to let the city try to give me a 48-hour notice to euthanize this dog. Hence, I took the upper hand and informed Denis Bugeaud that I was ready to go to Superior Court once again. Despite the city saying they can't track me down, they know where I am. They know where I live. If they wanted to track me down and get me a court order to show up with the dog, they certainly know how they could do that. They wish not to do that because killing the dog is not a reason. The dog can be rehabilitated, can be wearing a muzzle at all times in public, and that is not a problem. That is what I suggest for dogs like Akimo. I want to explain why I seem to not be accepting the help that is offered on Facebook from these click bonbon trainers, as I refer to them. People who think that they know better than me, that they can do better than me with Akimo, that dogs like Akimo, some say should be put down, some say, no, I can work with them, I'll help you out. I'm able to determine. I don't need your evaluations. I have evaluations. I know the dog. I've worked with the dog. And I'm very able to determine what a dog needs as far as structure and behavior modification. I don't really need advice from people who have some kind of certification from either online courses or outrageously priced courses that they took. Experience for 20 years, in my opinion, is more valid than any certificate of a course that you took online. There are evaluations that are made by certification trained people are useless in court. Even if I got 5 evaluations, they would be useless. It has to be done by an approved vet with a specific PhD in behavior. There's only 80 of them in North America. They're the only ones that are recognized in court as an expert. Now, for all of you who don't understand why Rick, my son, who fights for animal rights, uses the term property. The law makes a dog property, and the activists really, really dislike that. However, the fact that it is property is the only reason the dog has the right to live. Because if it was not property, it wouldn't belong to anyone, it could be disposed of as people please. The animal laws that are in place right now help protect animals because they are sentient beings and they have feelings, and so yes, we have laws finally that protect them from being abused, but that does not give them the sole right to life. The fact that they belong to someone is what gives them the right to life. So the law is made in a way that if you're losing your dog based on either a municipal bylaw or some kind of complaint, then no, they can't just kill your dog because he is property. And that's where people get the right to fight for the enjoyment of their property. If it's not your property, then they don't have to return him to you. They can dispose as they please. So for all of you who feel that Rick is putting down animals by calling them property, it is in fact the only protection that dogs and cats have in Quebec, is the fact that they are property.